higher self or oversoul be family members? For example, can cousins be soul fragments from the same higher self?
There's no
Or
such
another
thing as
idea.
soul fragments. There are souls. If you're calling a fragment one of the souls that is connected to an oversoul, well, all right, then we understand your terminology. But there are no soul fragments. Souls are whole beings.
Okay, and is it true that twins have the same oversoul?
They can, they don't have to, but they can. It may be very likely, but it doesn't have to be absolute.
In the case of identical versus fraternal, is there any difference regarding oversoul
It is more
connection?
likely that identical might be extensions of the same oversoul. Again, it's not an absolute. And it might be more likely that twins that are only fraternal and not identical might still be extensions of the same oversoul, or more likely extensions of different oversouls for different reasons. But again, you have to take it on a case-by-case basis. Both are possible, but it's not an absolute. It depends on the purpose for the creation of the reflection of the twin or the triplet or what have you.
So I'm coming back to the idea of soul fragments. So there is no such thing as a soul fragment.
No. If you're referring to a soul fragment as simply one of the souls that make up an oversoul, then again, we understand the way you're using that terminology. But there is no such thing, aside from that expression, as a soul fragment. Souls are whole beings. There is no fragment of a soul.
Okay. And if this person's saying they know they're a soul with a body, but is it possible for an oversoul with to have many different bodies?
Well, yes, that's exactly what an oversoul does. An oversoul has many different souls, and each soul can have an incarnational physical experience or a body. That's exactly the description of the idea of how the oversoul experiences itself, because many of the souls that make it up may choose to have incarnations in different places and different times, and all of that experience as physical beings feeds back through the soul to the oversoul that is having all those experiences at the same time.
And this person would love to know what determines the oversoul group that we end up being in. Also, once an oversoul group, is manifest, do we remain in that group permanently?
Yes, you don't end up being in an oversoul. You start out that way. That's who you are. You're part of that vibration. You're part of that larger aspect of all that is. And then as an individual soul, you are an extension of that oversoul. That's who you are. You don't end up being there.
And how common is it for people with the same oversoul to meet in the same lifetime?
It's quite common. There can be many counterparts that will cross paths with each other, maybe interact with each other in a variety of different ways. Again, it depends upon the purpose for such an interaction. So I'm not saying it happens all the time, but it's quite common.
And how do you explain the concept of souls parallel life experiences impacting our current life journey? And what implications does this have on the infinite potential of our souls?
Well, again, this is what we've talked about many times when you talk about the idea of incarnations, past, present, future, where you're making cross connections energetically, informationally, sharing that information between different experiences that all coexist simultaneously, whether they seem to be in your historical timeline or in a parallel reality, doesn't matter. You connect to what you need to connect to draw information and experience from what serves your particular life path. So you're always plugging into and unplugging from different experiences in parallel realities to inform your life path, as other beings are doing for you, plugging into you to draw down your experience and information into them to help them with their life path, because it's just like one giant dynamic interactive internet. You're constantly sending and receiving information to different versions of extensions of different souls and parallel realities and what have you, in order to inform your path while you help others inform their path.
And does the higher mind or soul take feedback from the physical mind or the personality? For example, if someone is done and they've changed their mind about exploring something because it's actually more painful than they anticipated, can they terminate the agreement? And how can they do that?
No, you cannot terminate an agreement. You can postpone it, you can delay it, you cannot terminate it. An agreement is something that, in a sense, is part of your experience as a soul, that makes you unique, that makes you what you are. So when you have set up within yourself the parameters that allow you to experience parts of who you are, you cannot terminate that, because it would be like terminating a part of yourself, and you can't do that ultimately. You can postpone it. You can decide to leave physical reality before your prescribed time, the time that you originally set up, your end point, your exit point, because that's what you call suicide, when you leave early. But then you realize, when you go back into the soul form, that you were not finished with the agreement you made to be you in that way, to learn that thing that actually allows you to grow as a soul, as the soul you are, the unique soul you are. So you cannot change that. So you will perhaps postpone it. You may linger for a while and experience different things as a soul, non-physically, but then you will realize that in order to progress, in order to move forward, in order to grow, in order to change, you will, in some way, shape, or form, need to fulfill the parameters of that agreement, or you will not move forward. And not moving forward and not growing will at some point be such a strong and powerful urge within you, because of the nature of existence to expand, that you will finally decide in some way, shape, or form to continue to fulfill that agreement until you fulfill it. So you cannot erase it, but you can postpone it.
And since we have a body within our consciousness, is everything around you or me my consciousness? Is this an independent experience with the other being me too, or my version of them?
Well, yes,
How
your
far
version
around
of them.
me?
Your version of them.
Says, how far around me does my consciousness expand?
All your consciousness around you. That's what you experience. We use the analogy of the idea of projecting onto the inner surface of the soul that you're within, because your physical mind is within the soul. So if you imagine the soul as a sphere of energy that has an inner surface and you're at the center of it, then you project like a screen. This is just a euphemism, it's just a metaphor. You project the idea on the inner surface of the sphere that you are at the center of. So your consciousness, your reflection of physical reality, is all around you. That's all you experience. But that means you're experiencing your version of other beings, other souls, who are experiencing you as their version of you projected on the inner surface of their soul sphere, so to speak. This is just a crude, simplistic analogy. But again, it doesn't mean you're not interacting with other beings. That takes place on a different level. But you're creating, as a physical mind, all of those interactions out of your own energy, because you are at the center of your soul sphere, projecting it on the inner surface of that sphere, euphemistically speaking.
It's interesting because what you've described is very similar to what a person experiences inside of the sphere in Las Vegas.
Yes. That's why, again, you create these things to represent what's actually going on in reality, and your culture chooses to create representations of that idea. As you open your consciousness up, it's reflected in your technology all the time, in your culture, in your stories, so on and so forth.
Fascinating. Um,
Yes.
Is it correct that some souls incarnate on Earth compulsorily? And how does this come to be specifically? How does free will relate to this?
You always have free will as a soul. It's not compulsive. You choose to incarnate. Now, you may feel as a soul, so to speak, that it's important for you to do so. And if you want to call that a compulsion because you know that that's going to really help your soul grow and you are really driven to do that, well, fine. Then that can be, in a sense, a compulsion. But it's not something that is compulsive. You have a choice.
Can entities interfere with the communication between the triad mind? And if so, what are some of the common reasons why this interference takes place?
No, there's no such thing as that kind of interference in the way that you mean it. Again, you can choose to change your vibrational frequency to match frequencies of other beings, and in that way, you're influencing yourself in a way that makes it appear as if it might be coming from another being, but it's your own energy at a certain frequency that is experienced as interference, but it's not actually possible for another entity to interfere.
Okay, and this person is asking, how can I become an oversoul if I'm an individual soul now?
You can't. You are an individual soul. You are part of an oversoul. Again, in spirit, you can have the experience of perceiving yourself as an oversoul, but the oversoul exists at the same time that your soul does. So you don't become an oversoul. You simply have the ability to experience yourself from the oversoul perspective as a soul.
Okay. And this person is saying that they believe that nothing can affect them in a negative way unless they are a match to that energy. Is that a true belief?
Yes, if you actually believe it, you know it, you understand it. That's the way things work. Nothing can affect you that you don't choose to be affected by. And that's why it's so important to get into touch with the beliefs about why you believe it might be necessary to change your frequency to make it appear as if you're being affected negatively by something else.
And does that sort of relate to the question the individual had about changing their life theme that they were experiencing in a painful way because they decided that the path they had chosen for this life was too painful? Is that also an answer to that issue of
Yes.
experiencing life in a painful way, wanting to
Yes.
escape it?
Yes. Now
And
remember, yes, remember, the only reason life appears too painful is because of the belief systems you're holding on to that make it so. The journey, the path that every soul chooses is never actually too much to bear. It is something you have chosen for your soul's growth, to transform, to experience, to challenge yourself with. The only way it starts to appear to be too much to bear is because you're not allowing your belief system to align with your core frequency in a way that lets you know that you can handle the challenges you chose to face from the soul's perspective. So it is up to the physical mind and the belief system that makes up the physical mind to alter its beliefs in such a way as to experience that the challenges the soul chose are not something that is too much to bear. You can handle it if you align your beliefs to your core frequency. If you let go of those beliefs that are negative and fear-based, you will be a match for the soul's path that the soul chose. It only becomes overwhelming when you have beliefs that are contrary to your core frequency as a being, as a soul.
this person wants to know if you think that any of us, or even just some of us, can accomplish the elevating or raising of our vibration that you so strongly advocate and suggest. What are your thoughts on our current procedure?
Yes, of course you can. Otherwise, it would be pointless for us to share this information with you. Therefore, we wouldn't do it. So the fact that we are sharing this information is a representation of the principle of the one-sided coin that we've talked about many times. It is our passion and our pleasure to share this information with you, which tells us that there are some individuals who are more than capable of receiving and absorbing and applying this information in a way that they can raise their vibration and have the experiences that we are talking about. Otherwise, it would be pointless for us to share this information. And we would then feel that it was pointless, know that it was pointless, and wouldn't share it. So the fact that we're sharing it should be your first clue that it is attainable. But it's up to you to attain it. You don't have to, but it is attainable. Otherwise, it wouldn't be given. So where are you at? Where you are at individually is up to you. Are you following the formula? Are you letting go of fear-based and negative beliefs, thus raising your vibration? You're the determiner of that. You're the determiner of where you're at. Obviously, enough of you are moving up, are raising your frequency in a way that allows us to see that we can continue to deliver new information, new perspectives, new insights, that we can continue to talk about the idea of the highest probability of open contact occurring in your lifetime very quickly. Otherwise, again, we would be talking about different things if we were talking to you at all. So you can use what we're sharing with you, the idea of the Interstellar Alliance social experiment, one example of that, showing you that you are progressing, or at least some of you are. So use what we're sharing with you as an indicator that you're progressing, if you are even aware of what we're sharing with you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be aware of it.
And since we cannot perceive what we are not the vibration of, how can we reach a person or entity with higher truths for help when we are in a very low state?
If you do reach the person, if you do reach the help, if you do match it, if you do have the ability to encounter it, then it means a part of the mix of your frequency contains the ability to do that, even though overall you might be functioning at a lower frequency. So you always contain the potential for that frequency to show itself and to access the information that you need. Remember that as physical beings, you are compartmentalized in many ways in your consciousness. Therefore, that may mean that there are still parts of your consciousness that are capable of operating on a higher frequency, even though it may not be the majority of those parts of your consciousness, but sufficient enough to reach out for and receive the assistance that other beings of higher frequency are sending to you.